Welcome to the Real Estate and Roast. I am so excited. This has been a journey and a legacy happening all at the same time. It's not what God would, no, not the, about, it's not about the blessing that God gives you. It's what God will do through you. Today, I'm so excited to be sitting here with our featured guest. But let me stop and tell you a little why the Real Estate Roast is so important. The Real Estate Roast started out of the concept and the narrative that when you start looking at Charlotte, there were investors looking at Charlotte, and they were trying to decide where to invest and where to spend their money in Charlotte, and they came up with a fund about $26 million. And they looked all across the U.S. and said Charlotte was where they want to invest their funds. They wanted to be more specific in that investment and looking at Charlotte and look at an actual zip code, which was 28216. That's where we're sitting right now on Beatty'sville Road. But they even went a little more specific than that. They said they wanted to look and target homes from the 150 to the $300,000 range. That's all the first-time home buyer homes. But their goal wasn't just 26 million. It was to look at a return on investment about 20% and turn around and go back and raise that fund up to $1 million. Guys, we're sitting here talking about an opportunity because that conversation that happened today, it happened about 2 years ago now. Why are we not in the room? Why are we not sitting there? The real estate and roast was started as a way to create a table versus having to seek tables to sit at. Today you're in the room not only with legends, but also the knowledge that can drive change about communities. Everything we'll talk about today is about building communities and getting people prepared to be in an opportunity to go out and drive and change their community. So with all due respect, I want to start off by introducing our guest. Our featured guest today is Dr. Mr. Roe Anderson. Roe Anderson is to give you a little bit backdrop about this man. He not only changed my life, but he's the reason we're sitting in the room. I always tell people when someone said they're walking through doors, remember someone had to create that door in order for you to walk through. And Mr. Roe Anderson has been that door builder for me. It's because of him as we sit at the corners of Bates Road and Sal that this building was purchased from Mr. Roe. And so not only is he not only in the commercial field, Mr. Rowe owns a number of residential properties and has led the game as far as a realtor and changed the lives all across Charlotte. If you're in the real estate field and been in for a while, you would have heard his name or seen the impact of been driven by some of the things he's doing in the community and the work he's done over the years. But with no further ado, I want to introduce Mr. Roe Anderson. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Roe. As we talked about the real estate and roast and how we got started, I knew this was going to be a pivotal point today because I would never start a new venture and launch out into a different direction of education without bringing someone who was in the root and in the ground and giving everyone in this room an opportunity to meet not only a living legend, but someone who's been driving change in the Charlotte landscape as far as real estate over the past few years. Let me start by asking a question. Tell me a little about who you are and where you grew up.
Well, I grew up in Louisiana. I was born in New Orleans, and I grew up in Baton Rouge. I went to the public schools of Baton Rouge, Louisiana through 10th grade. And then in 11th grade, I went to a school in Huntsville, Alabama called Oakwood Academy, which was a part of Oakwood College, which is now Oakwood University. And of course, at that time, the men and the academy men and the college men lived in the same dormitories. So I grew up with the dormitory, the college people too. And after graduating from Oakwood Academy, I graduated as a salutatorian of the academy. Then in the college, I stayed there for 2 years, and I was voted as a sophomore as most ambitious,
Wow.
based on they call them the campus favorites. I was majoring originally in chemistry, math, and theology. Originally, I wanted to be a medical missionary, but then I switched schools, and most of the kids who were in my academic class were going out to Nebraska. Now, this was back in the late 50s and early 60s, and so you see it was in the middle of segregation,
Yeah.
and et cetera. So everyone was going out to Nebraska. First, I should say I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. So Oakwood University and Oakwood Academy were a Seventh-day Adventist school. Now, some of you may know about Adventists, and some of you may not, but Adventist denomination is noted for taking people from a lower position in life and building them up. And so they're very noted for education things. In fact, when I went to Oakwood Academy, I remember the people at my church in Baton Rouge was telling me, they called me Moncrief. They said, Moncrief, your mother can't afford to send you to Oakwood. But when you tell me I can't do something,
You do it.
you don't want to do that, because then that's when I'm going to make sure I get it done.
That sounds like a winner, Mr. Ross. And I think you're still doing that to this day, as far as leading the charge. And you said Minecraft. So is that a name that they've given you over time?
What name?
Minecraft.
Oh, no, that's my middle name.
Middle name. Okay.
Wow. I guess I didn't tell you my name. My name is Huey Moncrief Rowe Anderson.
Wow.
Now, at the time I was born, by the way, I'm an old person.
He's not. He is definitely not. Mr. Rowe is definitely not old.
You all are young, and so some things that you'll do today that I didn't have opportunity to do. Basically, a lot of young people growing up in Louisiana in the 40s were named Huey. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Huey P. Long. Okay. He was assassinated. He was governor of Louisiana, and he became a senator from Louisiana. In fact, he was a demagogue, and he had a coalition of blacks and poor whites. And of course, they didn't like him, and he got assassinated. And so a lot of people named their kids Huey. In fact, I had a friend who was named Huey P. My mother didn't name me Huey P. She named me Huey M.
So you came from a long legacy of people who've been leading the charge. Let me jump right in, Mr. Rowe, real quick for some of the questions, because I want to dive into because your history is so extensive, and you have so much to share on background. When you started looking at real estate, tell me about your first real estate deal you ever did, and what were some of the lessons that you learned from it, and do you still currently own that asset?
Well, the first deal I did was not the first investment per se. The first deal I did was actually selling land in Florida, but I did it here. I forgot the name of the place down there, but I never bought it myself, but I was selling land in Florida. But the first deal I did was a FHA repo. I came to Charlotte. I did not know a soul here. In fact, I didn't even know Charlotte existed.
Wow. So you didn't know Charlotte existed. That's how small Charlotte was. It's on the map now, Mr. Rowe.
Absolutely. In fact, I boast about Charlotte all the time. But I bought a house out in an area called Eastbrook Woods, Hampshire Hills. I don't know if you all know that area. But at that time, there weren't any blacks out there. I was the first black to buy a house out there, and I sold it to myself. So you couldn't have got.
Time out, hold on, stop. So you bought a house. Now you're a realtor, right? Because
yes.
At the time, were you a realtor at the time?
No, I just got my real estate license.
Okay, so you bought a house and you sold it yourself.
Yes.
All right.
In fact, I learned a lot about real estate by selling that house to myself, because at that time, the FHA repos were presented every Friday morning in the Charlotte Observer. You would then know what houses were on the market.
So you mean to tell me they had all the repos in Charlotte, because most of us I know haven't read the paper in a while. So, but all the repos were listed in the paper, not online.
They were listed. He's talking about online. That would come in until the 80s, basically.
So there was no online back then. So you couldn't Google it, go to the website.
No, sir.
You had to go look in the paper to figure out repos.
Well, what I did, I was teaching full time at Johnson C. Smith. I came here to teach at Johnson C. Smith, and I was teaching chemistry, math, and physical science. And in fact, the way I got involved in real estate, it was very interesting. What you want me to tell them about that?
Tell me, how'd you get involved?
Okay. I was sharing an office space with a gentleman who was Dr. Boyd was his name. He had a PhD in psychology, and he was a new professor there. And so they gave us an office together. In fact, it was a nice sized room. I'm sorry about that.
That's fine.
My assistant calling me.
You got an assistant too.
Well, she does all the work now. She doesn't want me to deal with people. She thinks they take advantage of older people.
Well, we talk about in this room. We talk about that as a caveat in this room all the time.
Okay. uh, Mr. Boyd, Dr. Boyd was saying he was going down to Central Piedmont and was going to take this course in real estate. And I was just listening to him, listening to him talk. And I went down that very day and registered for the course at Central Piedmont.
So you registered for the real estate course,
Real estate
become
course.
a realtor.
Yes, to get my license. Back in those days, didn't have to take the extensive courses that you have to take now. Most of you are not members of the Board of Realtors because most investors now do not want to be realtors because they don't want to disclose to people the value of their property and stuff like that, because then if you don't tell them the true value, then that's against the law.
That's called ethics. We talked about that one as well.
Yes. Okay. So, I got my real estate license. And of course, I was interested in real estate because as far back as I can remember, my grandmother rented rooms. They had a big house and they rented rooms. And then
So let me stop there. So you had, so back, even back in your days before the internet had happened, they were renting rooms.
yes.
So what was that? Was that term? What was the term for that? Did you call it renting rooms or rooming houses back then?
Well, it wasn't so much a rooming house. My grandmother, I think her husband must have bought that house for her, but it was it was a large house for the neighborhood, and I grew up with three women, by the way: my mother, my grandmother, and my grandmother's sister, and they rented rooms. And my mother's sister got married, and so she moved out, and so it was just me, my mother, and my grandmother, and so we had another room that they could rent out.
So you've been doing. So you were actually raised off of the foundation of real estate by being in a place where they were actually already renting rooms. So you learned at
Yes.
an early age.
Yes, and when my mother married my stepfather, he had a house, and she had a house after my grandmother died, of course. And she didn't want to live in his house, and he didn't want to live in her house, so they bought a new house, which was out of the city limits. And so I moved from that area where I grew up in, out in the city, out in the sort of country in Baton Rouge. And so that was my first dealing with a new house. By the way, Southern University is in Baton Rouge, and so they have a section there called Southern Heights. Of course, it's probably an old section now, but Southern Heights was featured in the Jet magazine back in the 50s.
Wow. And I'm pretty sure you see on the wall in the archive, they've got a whole slew of old magazines, and Jet is one of the premier magazines on the wall. She's got a great archive in that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question, Mr. Rose. So over your lifespan, how many real estate deals have you done?
Well, I have one customer that I sold 58 houses to,
You sold
over the
58
years.
houses.
And every one of them, he didn't buy with any down payment.
Wow.
Zero down. But that was in the day when you could get VA houses with nothing down.
So you mean even back then, because lending has changed a lot now. I'm not sure that there is a loan where you can get a house with no money down, but they were doing no money down loans back then.
That's what VA was doing up until around 2006.
Okay.
2006, you could buy a VA house with nothing down, but now they have transferred those programs to national brokers, and they divide them to local brokers, and they put them in MLS now.
So just to kind of back up and make sure that the audience gets this. So we talk in the real estate roast, we always talk about lending and how lending actually has changed. So he's talking specifically about how back in the day, it used to be where you could get a loan with no money down. We know that's changed today, and they've gone to debt cover service ratio loans now, which are totally different, and you're required to put some down, most likely 30%. But if you're a seasoned investor, you could go down about 10%. We'll do some plugs later on about some of our lenders that can make that happen. But Mr. Rose, so moving forward, so you sold about 58 at the time. You sold about 58 houses
To
as a
one
realtor.
investor. In fact,
One investor.
That was one investor.
Wow.
But I was at a funeral this weekend. A friend of mine named Charles Blackman. I remember, well, he was very skeptical and very shy. You had to push him to do things, and so I had to try to push him to buy houses because he's now a millionaire. And but he bought up to 15 houses, and he's doing very well today. And then I sold some professors at Smith houses. I got them to invest.
So your strategy was that you were able to show and all your friends around sell them real estate, sell them real estate. So you did that effectively. So you've been teaching real estate for years now.
Yes, in fact, Central Piedmont offered me a job to teach the real estate course, but I wasn't interested in doing that, so I never did do that.
So what were some of the strategies you apply? Because again, one of the things we talk about today about real estate is getting in the game, getting started. What are some of the strategies that you use to amass the portfolio you have? And we'll talk about your portfolio in a second, but more about how you amassed it. But tell me a little about some of the strategies that you use to get into real estate. What were you doing? Were you doing wholesaling? Were you just doing off of MLS? Or how are you finding your deals and building your portfolio?
Well, let me give you a little history there. Back in the 70s, when I came to Charlotte, you were not able to be a member of the Charlotte Board of Realtors. They didn't have any black members.
Wow.
So they started a private MLS, and most of the blacks who were involved in real estate in those days joined that private MLS. And so that's how we listed properties and got involved in a group activity. And of course, we did very well. In fact, although I was a full-time teacher at Smith, I was selling more properties in Charlotte than the people who were members of the Board of Realtors and that private MLS, because I was truly a hustler back in those days.
And a game changer. He said hustler and a game changer. Game changer.
Yeah. And then I met Mr. John McDonald. I don't know if you all have heard of him. He died in 1995, I think it was. But he's the one who actually built this building. He
Wow.
came to Charlotte from Brooklyn, New York, and actually he was retiring here, and he built this with his spending change.
Wow. So you're saying that and we'll tell a little bit long in the future we'll talk more about Mr. what he's done because Mr. McDonald is an icon and he's done a lot in this community. But you're telling me that a black man used to own this building
Yes,
before you.
and that's how I got involved with the building originally, because his daughter, no, not his daughter, his niece and my wife were in Mercy Hospital. Mercy used to be an independent hospital. They were in Mercy Hospital at the same time, and they both had babies on the same day. And his niece and my wife became friends, and so I got to know him very well. And he adopted me as his nephew. And so I was managing this building for him in the 70s.
So you didn't own it yet, but you were managing the building. Now I want to step back 1 second. Did you in your years of being a realtor, did you buy did you build up your own portfolio first? How did you get the money to actually get to the point now where you're looking at managing but about to buy a commercial building?
Okay, well, I'll go back to the first investment I made. I was working at Smith, and I was getting a salary there. In fact, when I came, the salary I got was the same salary they would have paid me at UNCC. And at a school in Alabama that I had gone to, they offered me a job there too. But the reason why I didn't go there is because Smith would let my wife go to school free. And there in Alabama, they said my children could go free, but my wife couldn't go free. So I didn't go there. Although if I had gone there, my life would have been altogether different. But I'm sort of happy I came to Charlotte because I think Charlotte is a great city. And I don't know if I should say this or not, but I think Charlotte is blessed by God. And the reason why I think Charlotte is a blessed city is because back in the early days, it made efforts to keep things out of Charlotte. Like they tried to keep Hustler out, they tried to keep Playboy out, and all those kind of things. They cleared the
Bible
prostitutes
Belt.
off the
It was
streets.
Bible Belt, basically.
Yes.
Awesome.
And so I made some early mistakes, and I didn't have the background. So I did a lot of stuff based on what I was accustomed to coming from Louisiana. But I had a friend, and unfortunately he died, Dr. Derek Gardner. Have you heard of him?
I haven't.
He was a urologist.
So he actually mentored you in real estate, basically.
No. I helped him, and he bought a house in Seven Eagles. Have you heard of Seven Eagles?
Mhm.
Not a house, but land. You all haven't heard of Seven Eagles?
Oh, yeah.
Seven Eagles is probably the premier residential area in Charlotte. Period. It's across from South Park.
Oh, okay, South Park.
Not South Park. One brother has that unit off of South Park. What's the name of it? I forget.
Now, I'm not familiar with that area, but
No, well, Quail Hollow is over off of Park Road in South Mick. That's where Seven Eagles is over there. And if you go there and you see this sort of like fence around the area where it looked like they're going to build something there. They had planned to put a shopping center there, but they never got it done. But the houses in there are typically 11,000 square feet, stuff like that.
so you ended up buying homes over there, or you were helping him buy homes over there?
Well, I couldn't sell him the land because he wouldn't have gotten the land if I had sold him. So
Why wouldn't he have gotten the land?
because he was black.
Oh wow. So wow.
But he found an old black woman. I'm not sorry, an older white woman who actually sold him the land, and they were disappointed when he got it. But when you bought land out there, you had to build within so many months. You couldn't hold on the land like in Hyde Park. They got some lots up there still that people haven't built on. You couldn't do that out of
So
Eagle.
I want to just bring it into perspective, because again, this is as I think about where we are today with real estate and the things that we are doing, and in this room, the power we're creating. We have different challenges today, and those challenges are some of the things you're talking about. But yet, what you've just experienced and what you're talking about is a whole nother layer that we subconsciously don't deal with today.
Yes.
But I know it's still prevalent. So again, hats off to you for being able to overcome that and get to where you are. And then not only having to have friends that you were able to show real estate, but now you're actually at the point where you're managing a building that we're sitting in today, but you actually end up buying it. How'd you buy the building?
Well, before I say that, I want to say something about Phil Berry. Have you all heard of Phil Berry School, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, he was a branch manager up here at what was NCNB then. It's now Bank of America. And the first deal I did, it was a listing that I had, and it was in Hidden Valley. And I'm sure most of you have heard of Hidden Valley,
Valley, yep.
although Hidden Valley originally was a white community. And when I came here, I think I sold the second house to a black community in Hidden Valley.
So you've been a game changer at the time. You've been making people mad all across the board.
Well, and a lot of people wanted to use me at that time because they felt sort of proud of having a doctor showing them houses. Now today, people don't take you around like they did back in our day. But Phil Berry was the branch manager here, and I went. I had a listing, my first listing in Hidden Valley, and the people had bought a new house, and so the house was ready to close. And they said, "Well, why don't you buy our house?" Now, I was afraid at that time to spend money to buy the house. And so what I did was I went to the branch over here and asked Phil for a loan. And he said he just gave me a loan on my name alone. He said,
Wait a minute. So you walk in, Mr. Rowe walks in the bank, and the banker gives you a loan,
yes,
just on your name.
on my name alone.
Wow. See, I know it's part of a legacy. That's what I'm talking about. Look, I can't wait to walk in the bank and just say, "Look, I'm Chris Dennis. They could give me a loan." So
Well, he gave it to me because he said, "You're a professor at Johnson C. Smith, so we know you're good." And so he just gave me the loan. It wasn't a large loan because you must remember now, back there, like a nice split level would cost no more than $24,000.
$24,000.
24,000. Well, the first house I bought, I sold it to myself for 24,500,
Wow.
and it was a FHA repo, so you had to pay 3% down. But I made 6% commission, so that was a good deal.
Wow.
And
So now fast forward, you've done deals.
and so now you want to know about this property.
Yes. How'd you buy it? How did, in this era that we're talking about, the racial divide, redlining, challenge with financing, not having access to capital, how did you end up buying this building?
Okay, well, Mr. McDonald died in 1995. Now, his wife contacted me because, we were friends, and I was sort of like the nephew. In fact, I was managing the building when he died, and she told me that the building was under foreclosure.
So you bought it in foreclosure. This building was in foreclosure.
This building was in foreclosure. In fact, this building was in foreclosure. The hotel was in foreclosure, and a lot of land pieces. I didn't even know there was a loan on this building, but he had borrowed money on this building to do an area called Fun City. Have you all been here long enough to know Fun City?
I've heard the story. They did a whole the historic documentation on his life, and that's actually a part of the history of
Okay.
the building. This building is basically historic because of Mr. Donald. So
Okay.
that story is published, and you'll be able to see it online. We'll be posting it out soon and have a big celebration around it. So
Okay, well, that's altogether different story. But a gentleman had convinced him to do the Fun City because they had one out on Highway 51 in Charlotte, and it was successful for a while. But uh, as long as he was living, he was able to handle it. But when he died, the family wasn't able to continue to cover the expenses and the loans and stuff that he had.
so around that, as you talk about how you purchase a building, legacy is one of the key things we talk about, and what I want to make sure that we understand, if we're not getting educated on how to not only play the game and know the rules, our legacy can get damaged and lost. So he's talking specifically about a point to where Mr. Knight had built this great empire, and along the line, some of the transition of knowledge didn't happen. And so with that, it goes into foreclosure, and a part of that legacy, in a sense, disappears and doesn't get that generational wealth stops there. So now you're at the point of buying the building.
Now, there was no loan company that would basically give me the money to buy this building. But what happened, my ex-wife had become friends with Graham Investment.
Wow, funny story. I actually some of the first deals I ever did, I did with Graham Investments off of Graham Street.
Okay. My wife told me about I needed some money, and she told me, "Why don't you go and talk to Graham?" And so I went and talked to Graham, and so I got some loans from them, and of course I was getting loans to buy, properties and stuff like that. And I would always pay him on time, or pay him ahead of time, and stuff like that. And so when this property became available, and Mrs. McDonald told me I should go and check on it because I didn't even know it was on the market. I went and checked on it, and I went and bid it on it.
So it was going through foreclosure. You walked up. You found an opportunity to meet Graham Investments, which was a family that had a fund, and they were lending. They were almost back in the day. Were they considered hard money lenders back then, or just straight lenders?
No, what happened was that I just assumed because Graham had been giving me money, to get other properties, that he would give me the money for this property, but he didn't do commercial loans, and so they weren't willing to give me a commercial loan. But what they told me they would be willing to do, they say I could bundle a set of properties together, and they would be also security on this building. So that's how I got this building. I bundle, I don't remember, I think it was about 6 or 7 houses together, and gave him a second mortgage on those houses. And let me tell you about the houses, because you missed that point. Originally, up until 1989, you could assume FHA and VA loans without permission. They stopped that in 1989.
Changed the game on us.
Okay, so I got a lot of properties that I probably couldn't get today because I came to Charlotte in a squareback Volkswagen. And so I didn't have a lot of money saved up. And plus, I had a wife and 2 kids, 2 young kids, and the wife was going to school full time. And of course, in those days, they weren't paying a lot of money. And so, but when I got involved in real estate and I was selling houses, really almost like hotcakes in those days, because I was willing to work hard and I was showing people how they can get stuff with nothing down in those FHA repos and VAs, because I didn't know anybody to get listings. Now, Foster Drakefoot, you all heard of him.
Bobby Drakefoot.
Bobby
Drakefoot's dad.
Bobby's father.
Yep.
He used to have an office over here in that building. He and another fellow named Withers and a gentleman by the name of Reagan, Hubert Reagan. Of course, they all dead now. But Reagan was the one who taught me how to do the loan assumptions because I wasn't buying any loan assumptions. But then,
So you mentioned term because I love terms. Loan assumptions. Explain loan assumptions.
okay, in those days, well, like for instance, you had a house and you got behind on your note in those days, and you had a FHA or VA loan, and so you could tell me, you could offer your house and let me assume the loan, and I could assume the loan, and I didn't have to get permission from HUD to assume it. I didn't have to get permission from the VA to assume it. So that's how I accumulated a lot of houses by assuming the loans. And I was able to pay the notes because I was working at Smith full time and I was selling real estate, and I take my commissions and reinvest them. And so
Wow. So
that's
so
how
you basically assume mortgages, help some people out because they had either got behind their mortgage, you assume their mortgage, you turned around and either rented it back to them or you rented to other people.
I rented to other people. And then I had a goal that whatever I paid for the house, I wanted at least the rent to be 1% of what I paid for it.
Wow, you had a whole strategy back then, 1%. Wow.
And so that's how we came up with it. But I remember one house I had in Hidden Valley. In fact, I never sold a house. In fact, I did sell it once to a gentleman by the name of Michael Turner. In fact, he was principal down here at Northwest West at one time. But then I bought it back from him and sold him another house.
So let me recap just for a second because you talked about a lot of stuff, Mr. Roy, and I want to put it in perspective because you talked about how you got into the commercial space because you packaged some homes. In the roast, we talk about assemblage. We talked about how to transfer into commercial. One of the ways to do it was to do a portfolio and then use your portfolio as leverage. So owning real estate and then using that as a leveraging tool to create the income to go get into commercial, and that's kind of what you did
In those days.
in those days.
But you all have a better opportunity than I had then because, of course, now all of my properties were in my personal names. Now, today, if you want to do that,
Ooh, Mr. Rowe.
well, I haven't got sued because I tried to do everything right.
We talk about the rules. And one of the things we talk about is the business structure. And a lot has changed, and I think again, the business side gives you asset protection. What you're talking about.
I'm antique, and so
You're not you're a legend. You're a legend.
I did one.
As a young kid, say you OG now.
I did one house that was ROWE Anderson Corporation, and I let that corporation fail because I didn't feel comfortable doing it through corporations. And when I finally sold the house, I had to sell it as a Huey M. ROWE Anderson doing business as ROWE Anderson Corporation.
Wow.
Because it wasn't up in Raleigh anymore. In fact, that house was in Wilmore. But that's another story.
So just to recap, Mr. Rowe. So right now today, are you still actively buying properties?
I only buy a few. In fact, one of the gentlemen that I mentioned to you that I helped to become a millionaire, his sister-in-law died, and so they called me about that house and wanted me to look at it and see if I wanted to buy it. And then I've had other people who knew me that have called me up and asked me if I wanted to buy their house. And so I try to help them. And one thing I've done that a lot of people today don't necessarily do, I don't try to maximize my return. I really, typically trying to help them. And of course, my assistant says I'm too lenient and I let people get away with murder. But the Lord has always blessed me. So whenever I've gotten short of money, He always brings a situation up for me to get money.
And I definitely can attest, Mr. Ron. You again, we talked about walking through doors and you building those doors because you created a door for me to walk through. And I want to say to you personally, I've seen the work you've done. You're not only a millionaire, but you created millionaires through investment. So you've actually mentored other millionaires. You were a mentor of mine, and I know a lot of other people that are in the room you've actually mentored it directly and indirectly. And so the lending piece. So you mentioned about lending. So you've actually been not only bought properties, or sold properties as a realtor, you've bought properties into a portfolio, which you actually put together to get into commercial, but you've also done lending. Tell me a little about lending and what that looks like to you.
Well, I got accustomed to lending back in the 80s, when Uncle John McDonald, gave me $300,000 to play with. He was interested in second mortgages, and so he gave me money that I could make some second mortgages with. And so, when I found people they were trying to buy a house and they didn't have enough money, I would lend them the money, and then I would collect the money for him. And so we did that. And as long as the money continued, then he would make money available to do second mortgages. Now, I've done a few, but I stopped because I got burned. I got
It wasn't about me, was it?
no, no, but I got burned. Usually, when I got burned in something, I don't do it anymore, uh, because I used to used to make personal loans, and uh, and because of my religious background, I have difficulty really going after people in a hard way, and so I
But now you stay at the courthouse, Mr. Rowe. I seen you down there at the courthouse. You stay at the courthouse.
well, you can go down there and look up foreclosures.
Okay. All right. All right. I'll take that. So when you look at, because I'm gonna wrap up and really give the audience a chance to ask some questions. But Mr. Rowe, again, I want to put it out. I want to put out that we'll talk more about it in another session. I definitely want to have you back because I think we've only touched on the residential side. You changed the game when it came to the commercial side, and on the lending side, um, you were very lenient because to the audience. When you talk, when you meet someone, you never know how they're gonna change your life. Um, the building that we're sitting in is 2023 Baseball Road. I bought this from Mr. Roe Anderson. He changed my life. But I'll tell you, when I went to go buy the building from him, he told me it just shocked me. If you want to get shocked, talk to Mr. Roe Anderson. I said to him, I want to buy the building from you, and he told me, I don't think you can close. You remember that conversation, Mr. Rowe?
Yeah, and I didn't think you were going to close. And if I had been a normal lender, I wouldn't have let you close because you took too long.
Wow. Y'all heard this live. I told y'all in for a treat. Yes, he told me. So yeah, you guys heard the battles that I went through, and the person that's selling me the building tells me he doesn't think I can close, and we were there. But here's the funny thing about it: God always has a way and a will. Mr. O, we not only closed this deal, but Mr. O also came back and became a private lender for me. But I'm gonna save that for next time, guys. Again, this is what it's all about: meeting the legacy. You heard a lot about his story, where he came from, and what he overcome. As investors today, we're walking in opportunities, and sometimes we're missing the blessings because we're not looking around to see all the gems that are laying at our feet. Thank you so much for Mr. Rowe for being here today and being with us.